Education Minister Blade Nzimande is expected to make an important announcement on tertiary fees this afternoon. This comes as National Treasury weighs in on the issue of the Fees Commission. The Fees Commission hearings have moved to Vanderbijlpark today. Treasury told the Commission that increasing spending on education will have consequences such as raising taxes. The Commission was established by President Jacob Zuma to look into the feasibility of the free higher education in the country. Today was also allocated to the EFF Student Command, but it's told the Commission that it will not be participating in the hearings anymore. Well, for more on this, we cross to our reporter Sipho Stearman, who's been covering that commission for us. Sipho, very good afternoon to you. So hearing from National Treasury today, and this will point to whether or not there can be some sort of realignment within the budget to understand if we can allocate more fees to higher education. But this, as we mentioned earlier, will not be without some sort of consequences, Sipho.
Good afternoon to you, Natasha. And indeed, day 3 of the Fees Commission here in Vanderbijlpark is about numbers and graphs and talking economics and just looking at issues of economic growth and how that will affect the funding for the education sector. And what the Treasury has said here, including what you mentioned in the intro, is that increased funding for the education sector would mean that there should be increases in taxes, and that's where the money would come from. Or he says that there would have to be reallocation of funds from other departments to be able to fund education, and saying that also they have spoken to government to try to sort of minimize their costs, especially talking about the issue of government staff, and saying that government needs to limit its staff intake, saying that government spending or on salaries of staff takes quite a huge chunk from the budget, and that going forward that needs to be taken care of. But maybe a sort of breaking news, if you can call it that, Treasury confirmed that they have not budgeted for another zero-fee increase following that of 2016. They said for going forward, they haven't budgeted on that. Probably then this tells us that when Minister of Education Blade Nzimande makes his announcement this afternoon, he will speak to the effect that there might be a certain increase. We don't know the percentage, but certainly Treasury has told us here, the Commission, that they have not budgeted for any more zero-fee increment.
I would imagine that the students' reaction to this will not be a good one. They have, of course, been quite unhappy about this commission. We've had student bodies leaving. The most recent is the EFF student body.
Yes, that's quite true. The EFF Student Command was supposed to come through here and also give its inputs to the Commission. However, it told the Commission that it will no longer participate as it has no confidence in the processes of this Commission. Now, this is not the first group. We've had groups like PASMA, the Pan-Africanist Student Movements. We've had the South African Union of Students. They've also indicated their disappointment and that they don't have confidence in the Commission. And this all relates to the issue of 2017 fees. They wanted the Commission to make a pronouncement on what's going to happen in terms of 2017, and they've made it quite clear that they will not accept anything less than a zero-fee increment in 2017 as well. Now, this means it's going to be quite an interesting afternoon for the education sector, considering that Treasury has said to us that they have not budgeted for another zero-fee increment.
And despite these issues being raised by the student bodies and having non-participation by some of the student bodies, the Commission has continued. What have officials been saying, Sipho?
Well, the Commission has to continue because part of its mandate is to not just look at the education sector at the immediate matter of 2017, but it has implications for the long term on move going forward. How does the education sector get funded? And of course, there's the talk of that those who can afford must pay, and those who can't afford then need assistance. But then the question is, how do you determine who can afford and who can't afford? So there needs to be sort of set principles in place that will help guide going to the future. How do you separate who can afford and how much assistance those who can't afford need? So it has to continue. The inputs that this Commission is taking are not only from students, it's also from the education sector, business sector, political movements, and also ordinary members of the public. So it is continuing with its work, and these hearings are scheduled up until March next year. So it will continue taking inputs.
All right, Sipho, thank you very much for that update. Sipho Steerman live from Vanderbijlpark, where those fees commissions are continuing.